All right, let's listen to some tones. I've got some stuff here for on Pro Tools. I've got some stuff for you guys. We're going to hear a series of tones. We're going to talk about Fletcher Munson. We're going to talk about some reverb, some echoes, early reflections, all that sort of thing. So it's important that you listen on headphones. I mean, if it's like Dr. Beat or something like that's fine. Even even listening on like earbuds is perfectly fine. But you're not going to get anything by listening to your phone like this, right? Get some headphones, something that you can actually use to actually hear the difference between all these things, right? So, well, here we go. So I've got Pro Tools here, and this first thing that we're going to listen to is a sine wave. All right, here we go. Oh, sorry. Here we go. Sine wave. Right. So a sine wave is a sound that has no harmonics. There's only one device in the world, real device. I mean, this is a computer, right? So it can, conjure up whatever. But there's only one physical device in the world that will make a sine wave. Everything else makes a complex wave of some kind or another with harmonics, like we talked about in class. A tuning fork is the only thing that actually makes a sine wave. A tuning fork, you've probably seen people hit it on something and put it on a violin or on a guitar or something like that so they can tune to it. So this is a sine wave. No harmonics, just a pure fundamental pitch, and that's it, right? So that's what it looks like, right? If I zoom way in here, that's what it looks like, right? So let's listen to the triangle wave. The triangle wave is a wave. It's got some harmonics, and it ends up looking like a triangle wave. Right here it is. Notice that it has that sort of buzzy sound. That buzzy sound are some strange harmonics in there, right? And so, so there you go, triangle. Your sawtooth. Again, just a different series of harmonics, right? Okay. Then finally, square wave, right? There are instruments that actually make versions of these sounds that are not quite as extreme, right? Like oboe, if you think about an oboe, that kind of sounds like, or a bassoon, I should say, sounds kind of like that, right? Not quite like that, but similar. And so if an oboe kind of has the same kind of sound as that, right? Synthesizer like that, and then of course, same thing. Square wave will end up happening when you distort things, right? As in, like, you've got something turned up too loud, right? Or somebody's singing into a microphone too loud. It'll start to distort. The distort is actually a square wave, right? Not quite as extreme as this, but that stuff, right? That's the sawtooth. I mean, the square wave. All right, so then let's listen to a different kind of tone or a different kind of noise. This is called white noise. Let me play it for you. We've all heard stuff like that before. White noise is every frequency in the audio spectrum at the same volume, right? So every frequency in the audio spectrum from 20 to 20,000 hertz at the same volume. Here's pink noise, very similar, just a little slightly different. So what is pink noise? Pink noise is every frequency audio spectrum at the same volume. However, it is been compensated. It's been adjusted for the fact that there's more frequencies in the higher octaves than they are in the lower ones, right? Remember we talked about in class, uh, an octave is just you double the frequency. Right. First of all, an octave is, just to remind everybody, for those who don't know, an octave is the same note, just higher, right? So I play an F sharp down here on the guitar, I play another F sharp, but higher, and then that's an octave, right? And then another F sharp above that is yet another octave, right? So from a frequency perspective, instead of a musical perspective, from a frequency perspective, an octave is just doubling the frequency. So if I go from 20 hertz to 40 hertz, I've made an octave, right? It's doubling the frequency, I've made an octave, right? And kind of like we talked about in class, the lower octaves, like the first octave that we humans can hear, there's only 20 hertzes, if you will. It's not right, they were quite right, the terminology, but there's 20 cycles in between 20 and 40, right? That's that first octave. There's only 20 cycles. In the top octave, we've got 10,000 cycles. The top octave is 10,000 to 20,000 hertz. So we've got 10,000 hertzes, right? So there's a lot more action in the top octave than there is in the bottom octave, right? So that's why when we listen to pink noise, every frequency in the audio spectrum at the same volume, it's shifted towards the high end because there's a lot more of those high frequencies they are in the lower. Pink noise sounds darker because what they've adjusted for is the fact that there's more, it's louder, the high frequencies are louder because there's more of them, right? So what we've done in pink noise, we actually adjust, we take the volume down and make all the octaves, let me put it this way, all the octaves in the audio spectrum are at the same volume, not just the frequencies, but all the octaves are the same volume. The top one is the same volume, the same loudness as the bottom one, right? Not true with white. So what's interesting about pink noise is that because it's every frequency in the audio spectrum at the same volume and all the octaves at the same volume, what we can use that, because it's a known quantity, we know that that is what we were talking about in class, flat frequency response, right? That is every frequency at the same volume, right? That's just like, from the definition in those, the terms, every frequency at the same volume, treated the same, right? So here's what's interesting. We can take that sound, right? And we know that it's perfectly flat. Every frequency at the audio spectrum at the same volume. We can take it, run it through our system, right? Let's say a PA system. Let's say we're doing live sound. We go out to our venue and we set up our equipment. We run that pink noise into the mixer and we send it out of the speakers, right? And then we take a super accurate mic like a DPA 4011 or something, or 4004, and we put it in our mix position, kind of where our head is, and we analyze the frequency content that microphone's picking up, right? Now, because peak noise is the same, all the frequencies at the same volume, right? If the sound that comes into our microphone from the room comes back different than flat, right? Then we know that the room is actually affecting the sound of our PA system, right? Or it could be the speakers that are affecting the sound, or who knows what else, right? And so with that, then we can make some adjustments with equalizers or acoustic treatment or moving the speakers in such a way, right? Same thing in a control room. Ideally, your control room is perfectly flat, perfectly accurate. And then what we can do is take, ideally, right? We know that's not quite true, but we can take this peak noise here, run it through our system, right? Pump it out of our speakers. And again, with a super accurate microphone like a DPA 4004, we put it in the room, and then that microphone will pick up what the room is doing to the sound, right? It'll kind of tell us how the room is affecting things, right? Then again, we can make some acoustic adjustments. Pretty interesting. Anyway, that's pink noise, right? Let's talk about, again, phase. Phase is the time relationship between two or more sound waves, right? And like I said in class, this is people are obsessed with us for good reason, right? Because things can cancel out. Now, what I've got here are two sine waves that are identical to each other. It's 100 hertz. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift them in time, right? So here is this guy, right? The pink one, right? Here is the blue one. Here's both of them together. A little bit louder, yeah? So watch this. I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to move it. I'm going to shift it in time. I'm going to pick it up. Let me do this here. I'm going to pick it up and shift it in time. I'm going to do this. I'm just going to do it like this, right? So here's pink. Let me add the blue. Right. Take this guy, move it even more. Here is pink. Here's blue. It's getting quieter. Oops, it's getting quieter. You'd think it'd be getting louder, but it's not. Like, so if you can see the waves, right, they're starting to cancel each other out. Let me move this over even more. Right. Here's pink. I'm going to add blue. Right? Getting quieter. Right? So that's what can happen in your recording. Right? Things can disappear. Different frequencies can disappear. Right? Let me do this. I'm going to actually take this guy and I'm going to flip the phase of it. The polarity really is the technical term for this. Right? I'm going to flip the polarity of that one. I'm going to make it exactly opposite of the other. I can do that, of course, in a computer. Right? And I'm going to invert. And oh, I did something bad here. There you go. Invert. Hope that didn't mess you guys up. Here we go. So now it is absolutely opposite of the other, right? So here's pink. I'm going to add blue. 0. Nothing at all. All right. That's bad news right there, right? So here's Fletcher Munson. I'm going to pull this guy up here. Right. So remember, Fletcher Munson describes the human ear's frequency response. And we are more sensitive to frequencies between 2,000, even 1,000 to 6,000 hertz. Somewhere in there. 2,000, 1,000 to 6,000 hertz. We hear those much better than we hear the super lows and the super highs, right? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to play a series of tones, right? I'm going to come over here to this thing so you guys can see, right? I'm going to zoom in there, right? So right now we're at 20 hertz. Most of you guys won't be able to hear that. It's not because you can't hear it. It's because your speakers or your headphones probably won't be able to reproduce it very well, if at all, right? So here we go. I'm going to turn that on. Let me turn this up to -5. There we go. There we go. Now notice, I want you to notice that signal right there, my signal meter, is going to remain the same the whole way through, right? Right. So now we're at 20 hertz. This is like the very bottom of our hearing range, right? Again, you probably won't hear it because of your speakers or your headphones, right? I can't hear it, but I'm going to move it up. I can start hearing that. Now I can notice I can hear it, and you could probably hear it, but this thing hasn't moved, right? This is telling us how loud the thing is coming into our DAW here. Now to me, this sounds like a sort of almost like a rumbling sound, right? I'm going to move this up to 39. Now notice that it's quite a bit louder now, right? Now it's not louder because it is louder. It's louder because your ears think it's louder, right? Notice this hasn't moved. Let me move it up to again, hasn't moved, right? We're just becoming more sensitive to the sound. It's not that it's getting louder, right? Excuse me. Seems a little bit louder now. Right? Even louder still. Louder, right? Right now we're getting to our really sensitive range, right? So almost 1,000 hertz. It seems like it's getting louder. The meter still hasn't moved. 2,000. Yeah. Ouch. Now it's getting rough. That's rough. So it's now starting to fall away again, right? Starting to fall away. It's, even though it's not super loud, it's really annoying. Here we go. Now your headphones may not be able to I'm guessing that you guys can hear that, like me. My headphones aren't actually reproducing that, right? Your headphones might. These gamer ones won't. Again, it sounds very soft. In fact, I can hear barely that, but, right? Again, just because you can't hear it doesn't mean that it's not there, right? So there it is. This has not changed for the whole thing, right? So that's the Fletcher Munson curve, right? Mm-hmm. Let's mute that. We don't want to hear that. All right. So let's talk about direct sound, early reflections, and reverb. Right. So direct sound is the sound that comes directly from the sound source. Let's say it's somebody playing guitar. Directly from the sound source, straight to your ear, or straight into a microphone. Right. Let me zoom out here. Early reflections are sounds that bounce off nearby walls or the floor, or the ceiling, right? And there's early reflections everywhere, right? Reverb is a bunch of reflections, but they're so close together that you can't actually perceive each individual echo. They really are reflections. They are echoes, right? But there's just so many of them, right? Think about this. You go out to the Grand Canyon and you stand on the edge and you yell across the canyon. Your voice travels across the canyon, bounces off the wall, comes back to you, right? You say, hello, hits the wall and comes back, and you hear, hello. Maybe there's several rocks, big, surfaces. So, hello, 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 like that. So those are echoes or reflections, right? Early reflections are the ones that happen the same thing, except they're very short, right? And they're inside of a room, right? And so in this room here, I say, hello, right? Well, you're going to hear my voice, right? This microphone picks up my voice, but it's also picking up the reflection from this desk. It picks up the reflection from the floor, from the ceiling, and that wall. Those are all discrete echoes that come into the microphone, right? But then there's also the sound from my voice goes out and bounces off these walls. Now, because the echoes are trapped inside of this room, they keep bouncing off the walls over and over and over and over again, right? And those echoes are so close together, right? All the bounces, right, are so close together that your ear doesn't perceive each individual echo. Like the Grand Canyon, your ear just blends them together into one sort of mass of sound, if you will, right? So if you've read ahead in your book, you'll know about the Haas Effect. Very important. We'll talk more about it in class. But the Haas Effect, this guy by the name of Haas, back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, experimenting, figured out that the human ear is incapable of discerning two sounds that are similar if they're within 20 milliseconds of each other, right? So if you hear a sound and then its echo is less than 20 milliseconds away from the original sound source, your ear won't hear two things. Your ear will only hear one thing, right? It'll notice that there's something different, but it won't notice that there's two sounds. It'll only notice one sound, right? So that's what happens with reverb. Again, if you go out to, say, the Irwin Center or some like basketball arena or something like that, or a gymnasium in a high school, and you say, hello, you're not going to hear hello, 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 hello. you just hear hello in this big wash of sound, the cave sound, right? The gymnasium sound. And that's just thousands, if not tens of thousands or more, hundreds of thousands of echoes super closely spaced together that your ear doesn't hear each echo. It just hears a big massive sound. So here is, let's say this direct sound. Oh, what I will say about early reflections will very much give you a sense of your space that you're in. So reverb as well. But, for example, bats use echolocation, right? They send out a sound, it bounces off the walls, or bounces off the rocks or the buildings or whatever. They can see, quote unquote, by hearing, right? People who are visually impaired do the same thing with their stick as they walk down the sidewalk or whatever it is. It's an amazing thing, right? They walk down the sidewalk, and they tap their stick on the ground, and they can hear those early reflections, the echoes off the nearby surfaces, and that gives them a clue of where they are, right? So they can see, if you will, by hearing, right? Well, everybody has this ability, right? We all do, right? It's just that we don't notice it as much. Those who have reasonably good vision. So I don't. So again, those early reflections give us a sense of space. You can tell how far away you are, or rather, I should say, you can tell by the reflections how far a nearby surface is to you, right? It gives you a sense of space. So when I come over here, right, and listen to this guitar, right? All right, so there we go, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw in the echoes. And I want you to notice, not only are you going to hear the echoes, but all of a sudden you hear a sense of space, right? I'll just turn it on in the middle of it. It'll be obvious. Turn it off. Right, so there you go. So all of a sudden, it feels like you're in a space of some kind. You hear the echo. So this is I've got two echoes going on. I have this echo here and this echo there. Right, now that's the guitar. So this is basically like two echoes bouncing, one echo bouncing off that wall over there and another echo bouncing off that wall over there. Right? One more time. Oops. So you can really hear the right? Right, those are echoes, right? Here is reverb, the same guitar, but I'm using a reverb. Here's the difference between reverb and echo. Right? So there we go. That's reverb, right? Again, the way that what reverb really is just the same thing as the other one. It's just that there's a lot more echoes and they're very close together, right? As a matter of fact, that's how they do it in real life. Here's the plugin. Here's my reverb plugin right here. The way it does it is it generates a whole bunch of echoes really closely spaced together, right? So again, come over here. Here's That's echo. There we go. Here's a classical guitar thing. Anyways, you get the idea, right? So there you go. Reverb, early reflections, direct sound, right? And all those different wave shapes: sine, sawtooth, triangle, square, white and pink noise, right? You got some phase. Now you understand phase. And like we were talking about in class, phase, it's easy to get that if you don't do things correctly. If you don't set your microphones properly, use the wrong mic, you'll end up with a lot of phase issues, right? And cancellation, and it's generally bad recording, right? And then the Fletcher Munson, right? So now remember from class, the Fletcher Munson, what I just showed you there is a Fletcher Munson at that whatever volume. Remember, the Fletcher Munson curve also describes that our hearing gets more accurate as things get louder. So it's really important that you consider how the audience is going to be hearing your recording, right? Whether they're going to be listening like Pantera fans or light rock fans. All right, good enough. I'll see you guys in class. All right, bye-bye.